Welcome, folks, to the Robbie Rowe Show. I'm your host, Robbie Rowland, and you are listening to The Bearded and the Brain with Dr. Josh Heenan. Now let's hear a soundbite from the doc himself.
Your max power is going to be linked to your max velocity, to your max speed, all these other things. Now, is it important to set a PR every time you go into the gym? Absolutely not. That's not our goal. Our goal is to maximize what you can do on the field.
Listening to Clear the Mechanism.
The Robbie Rowe Show.
The Robbie Rowe Show.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? It's your host, Robbie Rowland here. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another segment of The Bearded and the Brains. I really enjoy saying The Bearded and the Brains, almost as much as I enjoy The Robbie Rowe Show, but not yet. Anyways, episode 4, The Bearded and the Brains, about a 18 to 20 minute interview today with Josh. Anyways, we dive into the popular topic of what training looks like in season compared to off season. Right. And so what I kind of bring to the table is a personal experience in the ranks of professional baseball. And I know kind of throughout my career, it's varied depending on, A, the organization, B, my personal goals, and C, obviously I think age plays a huge factor in that, and basically experience and what how much you know your body. So obviously with Josh's background, I guess I should stop saying Josh, right? With Dr. Heenan's background, very smart in the realm of training and how to truly optimize the individual. And he says it over and over and over again about determining what the goal is and how everyone should be dead set on the goal of when you step onto the field, you should be feeling 125% optimal. And now what is that going to look like, and how are we going to get there? So anyways, I wanted to plug, I know I've been doing it a lot lately on my podcast, but my mechanical video analysis. And I think this is a huge, and I'm biased because I'm like the owner and operator of it. But seriously, man, like I can't tell you guys how many questions I get each and every day about how, specific individuals throwing this far in distance, doing this stuff in the weight room. And then when they get on the mound, they're just not really at a velocity where they are satisfied with. And for me personally, again, I kind of say it a lot, is like, I don't want to be known as the quote unquote mechanics guy. That made me sound like a car guy. But anyways, I don't want to be known as the mechanics guy. But at the same time, I think knowing what I had gone through in my career, the inefficient movements that I had for a long period of time, and because I was in that same boat, I joke around a lot when it comes to, like my coaching or my one-on-one stuff with clients, is like, I've literally been every single type of player you can think of, right? Like I've been the high school draft pick, the phenom, I guess I wouldn't say phenom, but prospect. I've been like bottom of the totem pole. I've been like the sidearm guy. I've been the four seam guy. I've been the curveball guy, change up guy, like all of these different things. And I think just all of those experiences molded into one person, like I'm able to assist and, just better understand the individual that I'm working with. So with that being said, I think a lot of it does have to do with some inefficiencies and some mechanical breakdowns when you do get on the mound. And I've seen a lot of good success with the program that I've been doing, the video analysis on my website. You can find the link to that in these show notes, or if you don't know what show notes are, just go to my Instagram page and click that link in the bio, and then you'll take it to the page and it'll say on there mechanical video analysis. Just to give you a brief overview of what that is I require 2 different videos from the center field angle and from the open side. I plug those 2 videos into an app that allows me to slow it down, write on it, draw on it, talk over it, and basically just give you an idea of what I'm seeing and how I think you can use whatever it is better. And then last thing I do with the individual is I take a video of myself, and I think you may have seen this on Instagram, is I just kind of give the individual a firsthand look at what I'm talking about when I'm doing the analysis, and what that looks like in person. So the person, the individual doesn't have to sit there and think about, making the image in his head. So it just gives me a better understanding of what I'm talking about and how to put that into motion. So what that is, it's a $40 one-time fee. I also supply a discount code for those of you who listen on this podcast. It's a podcast users discount code. If you do end up going to the website and you want to purchase your video analysis, at checkout, you're going to enter the code Robbie Rowe Show, ROBBYROWSHOW, and that'll save you 20% on your video analysis. All right, guys. Well, without further ado, let's get to episode 4, The Beard and the Brains, talking about in-season versus off-season training. Thanks, guys, for listening. Hope you enjoy.
I know you get a lot of questions a lot, and it's probably a very popular topic within the baseball community, but what does in-season training look like compared to the off-season, man?
Well, as we talked about in our last one, when we talked about long-term athletic development, it's always figuring out what is the goal of that season and what's the goal of that segment of training. And, off season is commonly thought about as, all right, we're going to gain muscle mass, strength, size, all these things, and kind of maximize our power. As we transition to our in-season programming or preseason, in-season, I really treat those as about the same. The goal is to really make sure that you maintain that stuff and those qualities, which primarily are going to be your muscle mass, your strength, and your power. Where I think people make the mistake is they think that you just need to maintain when you're in season. Whereas if you are following proper training protocols and you're training at an appropriate amount, which is going to be different for every single athlete, depending on their needs, depending on their position, depending on their use, that they're, an everyday catcher is going to have a very different program than a guy that's
or a
relieving
pitcher is going to have a high workload, right? So you're probably in that same.
Absolutely. So really primary guidelines, especially for those that are like just trying to take a very simple takeaway. Yeah. I want to see our guys in the off season between 3 to 6 days a week, depending on their goals and their needs. In season, preseason, in season, I'm looking for 2 to 3 days a week. We know that anything less than 2 days a week, and you can argue 1 day a week, but really 2 days a week with a heavy emphasis on intensity, so less volume, so thinking less 4 sets of 8, 5 sets of 8, and more like 3 sets of 3. So higher intensity, less volume. Volume is the total amount of work, which is usually we look at sets times reps as our big volume number.
Yeah.
So more intense to maintain your strength and your muscle mass, and then peak your power. So we had a great example of one of our pro guys, pitcher in the Diamondbacks today. He ended up doing 425 on his trap bar. Abraham Almonte.
Shout out.
My man. I'm sure he'll be watching at some point. 425 on his trap bar deadlift with 8 chains. But he was only doing, I think he did 4 or 5 sets of 2. So we're really trying to peak his power, so to speak, which is a great thing we can do throughout the season. There's no reason that we need to taper and really like what we'd call periodize things where you're like, all right, now we're in a power phase. We should always be in a strength phase. We should always be in a power phase. And we should always be trying to maintain or increase our muscle mass. So it's about trying to kind of push through and fit the needs to that athlete.
Is it bad for the athlete? Because I know I fit this mold as well, where we train so rigorously throughout the off season, where It's like, 5-6 times a week, and you're crushing it, right? And then you get to spring training, and you just slam on the brakes. I know every organization I've been in, it's like 2 times a week.
Right.
Is that bad for one's body? Maybe break down?
Bad, I would say no. Less than optimal, absolutely. And I think if my experience with most pro organizations and their programs are that you'll go from a heavy off season of like 5 sets of 3 on your deadlift. So a guy that can pull 500 pounds is going to be deadlifting, 415 for a set of 3 and doing it 5 times. That's a good a level of intensity, and and challenge for that athlete. Then they go into the season, and I know one organization, we had a guy that was mid 500s deadlifter, 6'3", stud across the field, played multiple positions, and he went into an organization where they said, you can't deadlift more than 225. So
what is that, 50% of his...
Not even. So he's...
Math.
Right. So he's not even doing 50% of his intensity. But think about what happens. They're like, all right, you can do 3 sets of max at 225. So this dude's doing 3 sets at 225 for sets of 15 to 25 reps. That level of volume is insane. That's like, so he's doing somewhere between 50 and 60 reps of total deadlift, when in the off season we're doing 10, 15 reps.
Well, then it goes against what the organization preaches, because like every organization that I've been in is leave it on the field, right? Like don't waste it all in your catch play or in the weight room.
Right. And if we're going to take like a distance running analogy, if you were running track and we're like, hey, off season, you're a mile runner. And like, we're going to prepare yourself. So you're like, all right, I'm going to do sprint repeats where you're going to do like 600 meters or 400 meters or 800 meters. And then you're going to build up your volume so that you're like, hey, I can like max out and do my 1 mile run the best I possibly can. Mm-hmm. Then we go in season. We're like, on training days, I want you to run 7 miles. Mm-hmm. Why the hell will we be running 7 miles? You're going to take away from what we're going to put out on the in the race.
Well, the thing that I think of is like, 'cause just from speaking on personal experience, there's been a lot of years, especially in my younger years, where I didn't know as much.
Right.
But I would feel so good in the off season, and I wouldn't be mindful of the reasoning why I felt good. But then I'd go into the season and that spring training, and it was brake pedal approach with everything. It wasn't just training. It was, the sleep you're getting, even like my long toss program, how much the volume that I threw on in my off season, everything like drastically changed. Diet, like it all changes, you know. Whereas I hear it all the time too, where athletes are optimal in their off season. They're maxing out, they're PRing, they're throwing their velocities skyrocketed.
And why wouldn't you want to PR in the season? Your max power is going to be linked to your max velocity, to your max speed, all these other things. Now, is it important to set a PR every time you go into the gym? Absolutely not. That's not our goal. Our goal is to maximize what you can do on the field. So if you just think of training, our goal, like the 90-mile-an-hour formula, for instance, chin up, deadlift, reverse lunge. If you look at our big indicator exercises, okay, all of those are somehow replicating what we're going to do when you're throwing for a pitcher, okay? So let's say Robbie Rowe is training 6 times a week in the off season, and we're training those components at some level every single day. We're just, whether it's our warm-up or heavy training, whatever, we're working those components. We're still working throwing. We're just not working the exact motion of throwing. Mm-hmm. We're working the pieces so we can put it back together. As we reach towards preseason, we'll taper our guys and we'll start to add in throwing volume, whether it's their weighted ball throws, long toss, flat ground work, whatever it is, we'll taper that to complement our training. So maybe it's a guy's like, hey, I want to get back to throwing. Great. So throw twice a week. Maybe some of our pro guys want to start throwing in October. We try to hold the reins a little bit until maybe Thanksgiving, and then they start going.
I think that's a popular thing too. Like ever since Scherzer came out and was like, "I throw year round," I feel like
there's nothing wrong with that, and that's outside.
I think it's per individual,
exactly.
But we won't dive into.
No. That's a whole other can of worms that I'm sure we'll get to another.
I want to ask you. You want to?
Yeah, I want to finish one more point, and then we'll crush this. So if we're going to do 6 days a week of training, and now you have. Let's taper you a little bit. So we're going to focus 2 days more on throwing and then 4 on training. And then we're going to taper it even more. So as you get closer to the season.
Oh, this is off season.
So yeah. So as we're transitioning from off season of 5-6 days a week of heavy training, we taper you as you get closer to preseason and in season. We might go to like a 4 times a week of heavy training, where maybe instead of your hour and 15, hour and 30-minute workouts, they're 45, 60-minute workouts. And then for 4 days a week, and then 2 days a week, we're like, hey, this is your throwing day. Like, get after it on your throwing. We'll start adding volume there because your body can only handle so much stress, and that's what it is at the end of the day. And then eventually, as we get towards the in-season, if you're, say, a starting pitcher, we know we're going to have 3 days a week all year round that we can really get after it. Yeah. Maybe 2 really heavy ones and 1 kind of modified. We'll get you to a 3-day-a-week throwing program. and then get you to 3 days a week of heavier training. So now the volume, your body is handling this volume. We're just displacing in different areas, whether it's throwing or training.
Yeah, but that's being adaptable, right? I mean, like everyone's body, you have a certain capacity, but at the same time, like in my experience, what I've learned about the adaptation of the body is like you train it to adapt to the environment that you're in. So absolutely. I think that was for me as well, going back to my previous experience, was a high amount of load during the off season, in season like very moderate, and then I just wouldn't feel as good, my velocity wouldn't peak. So dive into that a little bit. Like, what is the importance of the individual knowing that, like, if they go into an organization or they go into college baseball, how much of it is on them to be like, yo, like, this is when I feel optimal, this is when I don't, and now we have to have a conversation?
Well, instead, I always like to answer something like that with a question. It's like, whose career is this?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's got to come back to the athlete. And the amount of athletes in pro organizations, in college organizations, to be very frank, but more so the pros, that are like, wait a second, why am I doing this? And having questions. Mm-hmm. It's not saying that the pro organizations are not doing it right, because a lot of them are.
Right.
But are they doing it right for the organization as a whole, or are they doing it right for the individual? Mm-hmm. And that's where it gets tough. And that's where the private sector, I think, has the leg up. And you look at all these private sector organizations like ATP and Cressy and Driveline. I believe that we do a good job because we're working for the athlete as the individual, not as a whole. So at the end of the day, when we have someone reach out and say, hey, listen, I got to do XYZ programming, and I got to do my 20 sets of trap bar deadlift, or 20 reps of trap bar deadlift at 30% of my max.
And 20 sets.
And 20 sets. So my volume is insane. When we're training those athletes, we are literally writing a program to either complement or undo the bad changes that they're making with some of their programming. So it may be, we have professional clients that will write a 1 day a week program, and we're like, hey, when you're at home in your home gym,
no kidding.
When you're at your home gym, we have a guy. I have an athlete right now that's international, and when we write this person's program, I ask them to buy 3 kettlebells and like a little slider. Mm-hmm. Their once a week program for us is literally to kind of undo the other stuff, and then the other stuff is there because someone is sitting there with a clipboard and saying, "Oh, he did his exercises today," and they're checking the box.
Well, that's the thing with organizations, though, is, I mean, you know how it is. Like, they have so much to manage that we often talk about, like, that cookie cutter approach. But what other approach are you going to have?
Well, that's
why you say outside influences.
I think, personally, I think that they're doing each athlete a disservice. If you're going to pay a first rounder, a 17-year-old kid, $5 to $8 million to come out and play a professional sport that you have no idea if they actually can compete at that next level, because high school to pro ball is a very big jump, and then pro ball to double A is a very big jump, and double A to big leagues is a very big jump. It's in the finance world, it'd just be venture capital. It'd just be like, hey, throw money at it and maybe you'll have it. But if there was more money allocated to those athletes individually, in terms of not to the individuals, but to their development, in having a really highly qualified therapist, strength coach at each level that's going to monitor that athlete individually and customize their program to the athlete, it's a lot to manage. It's not easy for the athletic trainer.
You're saying, like, the organization hire a guy that's specifically for a group of...
No,
for one guy?
No, for your whole level. The fact that you're a right-handed pitcher that's 6'4", 6'5", what are you, 6'5"? All right, we'll call it 6'5". 6'5".
I'm wearing shoes.
230 on a good day. You're going to have a different need than a left-hander that's a submarine guy, or we're in Omaha right now.
Yeah.
Pat is right down the street. He throws from both sides.
Does he live here?
He lives about 4 blocks that way.
No kidding?
Yep.
He can come on the podcast.
I might be able to hook that up.
Good podcast.
Let's see what we can do.
Think he can come in this kitchen?
I don't know. Probably not.
That sounds weird.
So, anyways, but he's throwing from both sides. His needs are going to be very different than your needs. Yeah. So why are programs, and I'm not talking about Pat specifically, I'm just using him as an example. Why is your program, if you're a minor leaguer, the same as Pat's, the same as a middle infielder that's riding the bench?
Well, I think a lot of it, too, is in my experience, and everyone else could have a different experience, but when I was 18 to 22, my program and like the way that I was watched and the level of importance of what I was doing in the gym drastically changed from when I was 23 to 27 now in an organization, because you get that respect factor, you get that the way the individual carries himself, like, okay, he has an idea, he knows what he's doing. But I could honestly say, like, with a straight face, when I was 18, I never touched a weight before. So when I drafted by Arizona, it was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I think everything that they're saying is gospel, and it's like
and realize that you going from no training to some training, the good that you got out of it was probably very dramatic.
Yeah.
Regardless of how customized and individualized it was for you.
Well, Arizona, we'll won't go into that. But all right, so we hammered maintaining strength. So you're totally fine with PRing during the season, because I know that's a hot topic as well.
I was 5 seasons at Sacred Heart University, a small D1 school we've talked about before. And all 5 years we made the conference championship. All 5 years we had a very unique conference schedule, because we would get to our conference tournament and we would have like a solid week layoff. And then we had our conference championship, and then we had between like a 10 and 14 day drop off from that to the national tournament. So our number one goal is to win the conference, because conference is going to put us in the national tournament. We would PR the week going into the conference tournament, and then oftentimes come back and PR in the next 12 days before we went to the national tournament. And there's no coincidence, in my opinion, of we were able to control volume that way. We were peaking our power and strength, while other teams are literally like nursing wounds. We're peaking,
right?
And I think that's a huge component.
It's like growing.
Exactly. And what I think people forget is that they look at the formula and they say, "Oh, well, I got a lunge," and then I think we're now hitting a scale of people that see the formula like, "Well, I got a lunge 1.5 times my body weight, so I can do X, Y, and Z." Yeah, sure, that's great, but like, what's your form like? Because I'm getting a lot of videos now, and I'm like, oh god, this guy's gonna kill himself. Like, and that's tough. And I hope my audience understands that, like, if I comment and like, hey, you got to work on this, or like, be careful of this, or like, it's because I care, because the end goal for what you're doing and what I'm doing is try to give advantages to every athlete that's going to take the next step.
Oh yeah, seek them out too.
And us being hard and critical is not trying to be a jerk. It's trying to be transparent that, hey, what's your goal? Is your goal to have a 1 rep max PR of 2 times your body weight reverse lunge? Or is your goal to move so efficiently that every time you go to throw a fastball, or every time you make a first step to swipe a bag, that you're going to be so efficient that your body is going to be optimal in that movement, so that you're moving faster and you can do it with consistency, which is going to allow you to throw more strikes, allow you to have more force production, all these things layer on one another.
I mean, health is like that.
General health.
Yeah. I mean, when we first started working together, like, I hated you because it was everything.
Yeah, it was
freaking wrong, man.
Well, so it was just less than optimal, and you're someone that prides yourself on being optimal. And when I look at an athlete come in, the first day that we worked together, once we're getting to like time and space, instead of just checking out the lat and seeing what was going on, when we're looking at like how you're moving, the number one thing that pops in my head, and I think it's because I grew up in a physical therapy setting, along adjacent a strength and conditioning setting, I'm like, what is this guy going to feel like when he's 50? What is he going to feel like when he's 70? And if you're not moving optimally now in your early 20s, mid 20s, later 20s, it's not going to belay itself into a healthy longevity. I want our guys to make the big leagues, stay there, be healthy, do whatever they can do as long as humanly possible, and then go out and be able to do what the rest of they want for the next 60 years of their life.
Yeah, it's not just that short window.
Yeah, that short window is great, but if you can't pick up your grandkids, there's no way to live.
Yeah. Thanks for your time on the Robbie Rowe Show.
You got it, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to another episode of the Robbie Rowe Show. This edition was obviously The Bearded and the Brains with Josh Heenan. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for being listeners, and I ask you to do one special thing for me to increase the popularity and try to reach more people with this show is if you have an iPhone, open up the Apple Podcast app. If you don't have it, download it from the App Store, but I'm assuming you have it because you're listening to the show. Bottom right, there'll be a search tab. Hit that search tab. Type in The Robbie Rowe Show. Click on my podcast. Scroll down, you'll see ratings and reviews. You'll see an option to write a review. And I just ask you please to write like a nice review, right? Like, hey, yo, this guy sounds smart sometimes. Or he doesn't, but he brings on guests that sound smart. So anything will help. Like I said, it just increases the popularity and it increases the reach to more and more individuals. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I hope you have a good rest of your day. God bless. See ya.